All right, let's start with our next chapter, which is going to focus on two civilizations, classical China and classical India. And starting off with the Chinese information. So the first thing we're going to look at is philosophy, Chinese philosophy. Remember, philosophy, we define it as an understanding of the world or a study of wisdom, study of society, and man's place in the world. And during the transition between the ancient dynasties of the Zhao and the Shang to the classical dynasties, which are the Qin and the Han, we see the formation, the development of three Chinese philosophies. And we're going to go through each one of these. The most important one, without a doubt, is Confucianism. And Confucianism was founded by this guy. His name was Kung Fu Tzu, and he eventually becomes known to us in the West as Confucius. And he was born and he lived during the time of the Warring States period. This was a civil war era in Chinese history between the fall of the Zhao and the rise of the next dynasty, which is the Qin. And so it was like about a 200-year um, civil war period with which different kings within China are all trying to compete for authority, each one trying to claim that they are the next family, the next dynasty to get the mandate of heaven. And the Confucius, living in this kind of like violent time, he went around trying to offer advice, trying to tell people, look, we live this way, and it convince rulers to follow his ideas, and that by following his ideas, you'll come to, have this peace and harmony in society. And in his lifetime, he wasn't very successful, but he did gain enough followers that after his death, his followers went around, wrote down all his teachings into a book called the Analects, and they continued on this message, and eventually it caught on. Basically, the main concepts of Confucianism is this idea that there is a social hierarchy, that everyone in society has a status, right? Upper class, middle class, lower class. And that if everyone understood what their role was, and everyone understood what their relationship to everyone else is, then society will run smoothly, right? So the ruler will be the ruler, the farmer will be the farmer, the soldier will be the soldier, right? Um, and as long as you did your job, whether it be a farmer or an artisan or a soldier or a king, and you respected the other people's status, then everything will be fine. And religion doesn't. This is not a religion. Confucianism. Later on, it will become a religion. But in this early time, in the classical era, Confucianism is simply a philosophy. It's a way of thinking about life and a way of living. But it doesn't teach you what to believe, and doesn't teach you about afterlife or gods or anything else. Even though Confucius did think that religious practices and traditions were of importance. So here are the relationships. He calls these the five main or cardinal relationships, right? So the ruler is in charge of the subject, right? The ruler has to respect the subject. He can't be abusive. He can't be violent towards the subject. He can't be cruel. And in return, the subject must be obedient to the ruler. Same relationship between the father and the son, right? The son has to show utmost respect to the father, but the father has to, raise and guide the son into manhood. Same relationship, husband and wife, right? The husband has to take care of the wife and provide for her, while the wife has to be obedient to her husband. Same thing with older brother and younger brother. Same thing with friend or neighbor. Okay, so everyone falls under one of these relationships, and everyone has kind of expectations and rules that fall or that are part of these relationships. So if you're a friend or your neighbors, then you're supposed to treat each other equally because you are equal. But in these other relationships, there is an upper and there's a lower, and the lower must show respect while the upper must show support and must show support. So here we see Confucius, another statue. He's quite common, popular in China even to this day. And like I said, he lived during the fall of the Zhao, and he attempted to bring this, society back to harmony, back to peace during this, very violent time of the Warring States period. So besides these five relationships, family was absolutely important to Confucius. And he says that the family is the center of society. It's the most important unit of society because your family teaches you to be a good person. Your family teaches you your role. So if you're born into a farmer family, your family will not tell you, okay, maybe one day you can, grow up and be a professor or a merchant, because that's not your family's role. Your family's role is to be a farmer. So they teach you your values, your ethics. It teaches you your role. It teaches you what is expected of you. If you're a farmer, you're expected to be a farmer. And on top of that, we have this idea of called filial piety. And filial piety is basically that the father was the head of the household, right? The oldest male, sometimes the father, it could be the grandfather, and he expected respect, right? He deserved all of the family's respect. So the father or the patriarch of the family, the oldest male, they decide what is going to happen in your life. So if they decide who you marry, they decide what career you take, they decide where you live, and anything that you do to dishonor yourself is also a dishonor to the family. So, for example, if you decide to run away and marry the person you love instead of marrying the person you're supposed to, because your family said you're supposed to marry that person, right? That will bring great shame and dishonor to your family, right? And everyone will suffer. So the idea of filial piety is not only that the patriarch, the oldest male, has absolute authority over everyone in the household, and that they deserve respect, but that everyone needs to give up their needs or their wants to the needs or the wants of the oldest male. So, for example, let's say you really want to go away for college, right? You've been studying, you've been learning, and you want to go away to college, and then the patriarch tells you, hey, I can't have you go away to college. I need you to stay here and help me run the farm, help me run the store, help me run whatever. Guess what? You're not going to go to college. You are forced to stay there because that is the will, the desire, the need of the family. So you have to put your personal need underneath the need of what is best for the family. And under this mentality, women would have zero rights, or very, very few. They are expected to be subservient. That means they have to follow the father, the husband, the brother, the son. And even the older women, like the matriarch, right, the oldest female of the family, they might have a lot of respect. But it's always only in the domestic, in the house. If it's outside the house in society or in business, women are not given any respect whatsoever. And also, women did not get educated at all. Some upper class women might have, but generally speaking, Chinese women, did not get educated. All right, so that's Confucianism. The next philosophy is Taoism. I'm sure many of you are familiar with this very popular image, which is common to the Taoist beliefs. So Taoism has a founder. His name is Lao Tzu, and he's nicknamed the Old Master. And he lived during the same time, roughly around the same time as Confucius, but he definitely lived during the collapse of the Zhao dynasty during the Warring States period. And he also came up with a way of like how to solve all these problems that are plaguing China during the Civil War era. So he went around teaching people, and then he died, and then his followers wrote down all his sayings, all his teachings into a book called the Tao Te Ching, or the Tao Te Ching. And these books eventually become popular, and Taoism gains popularity in China. So basically, this idea of the Tao is basically that there's a way, that there's a path in life that everything kind of just falls into place. And the way you achieve the Tao, or follow the way, is to simply renounce your world, right? So if you're a farmer and your family expects to be a farmer and you're going to live your whole life being a farmer, but let's say that's not for you, you don't want to be a farmer, well, the Taoists will say, well, Just go do whatever you want. Go do whatever makes you happy. Because if you're happy with your, status and your situation in life, and other people are happy doing their thing, then there wouldn't be any conflicts in society, right? The only conflicts we have is when people are going against their inner nature. So if you're in harmony with your inner self, and you're happy with doing whatever it is that makes you happy, then you're not gonna have any problems with anyone. So everyone is expected to kind of do their own thing. And as long as you're not doing any harm to anyone else, then that's the best thing. So you have to figure it out for yourself, right? You have to find your own Tao, your own way. And part of this of kind of figuring out what is best for you is this idea of the yin and the yang. And basically, the Taoists believe that there's these two kind of universal forces that everything on earth, everything in life falls under, right? The yin and the yang. And everyone is composed of these two forces, and these two forces clash with each other. So you have, fire and water. You have light and dark. You have male and female, right? And the idea is that we are composed of these two forces, and as long as we keep them in balance, then you'll be happy. So if you're too aggressive, then you might have too much yang energy. And if you're too submissive, then you might have too much yin energy. So the idea is to try to figure out how to balance these two energies in your life, these two forces in your life, and you'll be happy. So this kind of like carries over into Chinese medicine and even Chinese art. So for example, the practice of acupuncture that has gained popularity in the West over the last few decades, right? This is a Taoist thing, right? The idea that your body, your energy is in balance, so you have to like puncture to release certain negative energies from your body, right? That is the yin yang thing, right? Or we also have this other idea of we call feng shui, which has become even more popular again in the last few years, where when you design your house, right, you try to design it to be balanced, right? So you see this picture. This is a feng shui living room. So you see the sofa over here, the chair over here, right? The table's in the middle, another chair, another sofa. The whole point of this is that this is balanced, right? It's symmetrical. It's even on both sides. On top of that, you are incorporating nature into the house, right? You have these open windows. You see some of the trees in the background. So the Chinese, when they build their homes and they build their palaces and they build their cities, right, they're constantly thinking, how are these energies, that are in nature, how do we incorporate them into our lives? So we see a big kind of incorporation of Taoism into everyday Chinese life, even to this day. All right, the third and the final of the three philosophies of China is legalism, and this is the least popular one. Anyways, the legalist policy also developed during the Warring State period, and the first dynasty or the first dynasty to adopt it is the Qin, right? The Qin, that's Qin dynasty. The Han dynasty that came after also had legalism, but they combined it with Confucianism. So anyways, the legalists believe that everyone's stupid, that people are naturally stupid and selfish and evil. And the only way to control society, the only way to bring stability to society, is that the government forces people, right, by being very strict, right? So this is kind of like recollecting Hammurabi, right? Very strict punishments for any criminals to keep people in line. So the government controls everything. The state, the ruler, tells you, what you can and cannot do, and because you can't trust people, right? The common people are stupid and ignorant and selfish, so you can't trust them. So the government has to take charge to keep society from falling apart. This also means that certain things are not going to be valued. So education is not important. Why do you need to be educated? Why do you need to know about math or science? Why do you need to know about, history or philosophy or poetry? That's not important. The only things important is farming and war and soldiers. So their mentality is that if you're not producing food for people to eat and you're not defending people, you're not important. So any other job, like an artist, a teacher, a student, merchants, they're not important. They don't really do anything to the legalist. The only thing that matters is food and protection. And so if you're, arts, who cares about arts? Right? No one's gonna die from not having a painting, but people are gonna die from invasions, or people are gonna die from starvation. So none of this matters. All that matters is that you build up your defenses and you build up your food surplus. So it is very basic needs survival mentality. And on top of that, they come up with this idea of self policing. So basically, you since the family is important, right? Each family member is responsible for the other family members. So if you have a younger brother who you know is doing something illegal, you are responsible for turning him in and have them get arrested and have them get punished. Because if the government finds out, then they're gonna get punished, but then your family's gonna get dishonored as well. So you have kind of like family members spying on each other on the name of saying that, of keeping society up and running. All right, so that's the three philosophies of classical China: Confucianism, Taoism, and legalism. See you next time.